Hey guys, for those of you who read Little Fires Everywhere, I hope you really enjoyed it. This has been one of my favorite novels for the past few years. I feel like there are just so many conflicts and so many layers, and that the writer does a really good job of switching back and forth between the perspectives of different characters. We see so much. Through the eyes of each character, and we see each character's prejudices and limits, and I think it's just a really enlightening and thought-provoking book. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as I always have. So this novel is a 50-point exam, so it doesn't count as much as some of your other exams because it's only on one book. You will have only 2 questions on this exam, but they are paragraph questions. So you won't write a whole essay for either question. You'll write one paragraph that's well developed, as in at least 5 to 7 sentences about each of the 2 questions. So each question is 25 points each. You will be required to use your book. So that's one thing that makes this exam a lot different. You'll actually need your novel with you while you complete the exam, because you will need a couple quotes from the novel. If you have struggled with incorporating quotes, if that's something on your essays that you have gotten deductions for, please make sure you look over the document. I think it's a PowerPoint presentation about how to incorporate quotes. That's been in several of your modules this semester. You will have 1 hour to complete the exam, so that will be 30 minutes for each paragraph. I may even make that 1 hour and 15 minutes. So you should have plenty of time to do a really good job on these exam questions, especially since you've been given them in advance. As far as studying goes, study your reading guide questions. I have narrowed down your reading guide questions to 4 on here that could possibly be on the exam, and then there are 4 additional questions that were not on your study guide that are on here. So just make sure that you could answer any of these, and make sure you've read the entire book, and you should be very well prepared for the exam. Okay, the first 4 questions, there will be 1 selected from these 4 that you will answer. And I put on here, these were tied to specific parts of the novel, but on the exam, you'll try to relate the question that you answer to the entire novel. All right, number 1 talks about Mrs. Richardson's penchant for charity, how she loves to give to the needy, and I think, in my opinion, and probably in your opinion, after having read the book, that's a lot less about actually helping people and more about making her feel satisfied about herself. She's very self-consumed in a lot of ways, and I think that giving to charity gives her the satisfaction that she is a good person. That's what helps her keep her confidence and her I guess self-esteem may be the right word. The question is, what in the novel indicates that she's not as generous and charitable as she believes she is? So think about that. Probably your answer is going to be centered on her treatment of Mia a lot, and probably even the conflict over who should have Mirabel / Mei Ling. Both of those conflicts, I think her reaction to really is revealing about Mrs. Richardson. Okay, number 2, and this was a question on your original study guide as well, and you should have done a little bit of research. Maybe you obviously can't do this research while you're taking the exam, so make sure you understand about this. If you have not read Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Scarlet Letter, the main character in The Scarlet Letter, you probably know the premise of it. She is forced in a Puritan town to wear the letter A, a scarlet letter A, on her dress because she has had a child out of wedlock. She's an adulterer. She's married, but her husband is overseas, and she has a child that could not possibly be her husband's child. And she not only has done this, but she will not tell the town who the father of her child is. So her punishment is, well, prison for a little while, jail. And then once she gets out of jail, she's forced to wear the scarlet letter A. And so Mia, obviously there's the whole conflict about who is Pearl's father. Mia never reveals to Pearl who her father is, and she well, actually, Elena Richardson finds out who Pearl's father is. She discovers the origin of, where Pearl came from. And so that definitely is a connection between Pearl and the Scarlet Letter and Pearl in Little Fires Everywhere. But what are the other connections? Is there anything else that Pearl in the Scarlet Letter and Pearl in Little Fires Everywhere have in common? I would probably write something about the fact that both of them have a mother who is considered somewhat an outcast from society, not part of the town. In the Scarlet Letter, Hester Prynne, even though she is looked down upon and judged by society, she's very much a helper for people. She nurses the sick, she does things for her community, and she's always happy to help. She's kind. And I think Mia is much the same way. She's always someone who is on the outskirts of society. She's never part of a group, and I think she prefers it that way. Yet she is kind. She's understanding. She helps. The Richardson family I think she sees through their facade and she doesn't believe them to be good people, yet she does help Lexi when, Lexi has her secret abortion, and even though Mia doesn't know what she's doing before she does it, she takes pity on her. Afterwards she helps her, knowing that it's something she'll hide. And she also forms a connection with Izzy, Izzy, who everyone else believes is such a bad child and no one else has a connection with. She forms a connection with her. So there are definitely lots of instances in the book where I think Mia, her kindness is displayed despite how she's been treated and how she remains an outcast of society. Okay, number 3, at the end of chapter 10, Mrs. Richardson begins to regard Mia as an enemy. Why is this, and how is it related to social class? And you probably know that has to do with the fact that she discovers that Mia has been in contact with Mirabelle's real mother. She's the one that has told Mirabelle's real mother where she is. And so that being the case, I don't think that's the only reason that Elena regards Mia as an enemy. There are more reasons and there are more things that happen. And I think that she sees Mia's talents and she sees some things about Mia that she's somewhat envious of. So just think really deeply if you choose to answer that question about why she really regards Mia as an enemy. Number 4, ironically and symbolically, Mia's decision to leave Shaker Heights deeply affects both Pearl and Izzy. Explain how each is affected. And so Pearl obviously doesn't want to leave Shaker Heights. She's in this relationship with Trip and has sort of ingratiated herself into the Richardson family. And for the first time in her life, she has felt like she belongs somewhere besides just with her mother. And so she is devastated at having to leave Shaker Heights. Her mother had promised her that they would stay, and they're leaving. And then Izzy, of course, has found a connection with Mia, and probably the only adult in her life who has taken the time to listen to her and not judge her based on her actions or her reputation, how she dresses and how she behaves. And so she's devastated as well. I think she, on a lot of levels, wishes Mia was her mother. And so her leaving is devastating to Izzy and somewhat, so to speak, sends her over the edge. So you would explain using evidence from the text how each of those two girls are affected by Mia's decision to leave. Okay, the next group of questions, there will be another question chosen from those. These are not on your original study guide. Okay, number 1, and I think if I were choosing one of these 4 questions, this is the one that I would choose. Which of the Richardson children changes most in the course of the novel? So you would take one of the 4 Richardson children and explain the transformation of that character. All 4 are transformed by the events in the novel, not just by Pearl and Mia necessarily, but by a lot of things. So any of them would be a good choice. I think that I would choose Moody. I was always sort of fascinated by Moody. Probably of all the 4 children, I identified the most with Moody. He's really introspective. He doesn't feel like he fits in. He clings to Pearl and thinks that, he has found a pearl in Pearl. He's found someone with whom he has a connection, and then he's devastated when Pearl chooses Trip over him. Okay, number 2, explain Pearl's fascination with the Richardsons. What aspects of their lives are most attractive to her and why? There are lots of pages in your book when Pearl first goes over to the Richardsons' home, where from her perspective, still in third person perspective, but third person limited, the author gives us a lot of insight into why Pearl is fascinated with them. Their sense of belonging, their house, the fact that their family, they can trace their family back for generations in Shaker Heights. They have a place that they belong, they have roots, whereas Pearl does not even know who her father is or what her origins are. She doesn't have grandparents that she knows, no town to really call her town. So there are lots of things about the Richardsons, their clothes, their way of doing things, their ease with each other that she envies. So you would explain her fascination and what causes it. Number 3, the relationship between Elena and Izzy, Mrs. Richardson and Izzy, is a major point of conflict in the novel that culminates in the fire at the end of the novel. Who do you think is most to blame for this conflict? So you would, if you chose this question, your topic sentence would need to make sure and state which of these 2 characters you think is most to blame, and then what evidence is there for that. I think most people would probably choose Elena. We are led, for the most part, to have a lot of compassion for Izzy as the story continues, and to probably judge Elena more harshly when we see her actions. So you would explain which of those 2 are most to blame. And there's a lot of explanation in the book about that conflict. It goes all the way back to when Izzy was born prematurely, and Elena felt like she had to protect her more than her other children. And that part almost led me to feel some compassion for Elena. Okay, number 4, the debate over who should raise baby Mei Ling or Mirabel, depending on which family you think has rights over her, would determine her name, is central to the plot of the novel. Who do you believe should raise her and the reasons why? So do you think that her biological mother should have her? Do you think she's better off with the family that she's with? So you would state one of those 2 and explain that. If you have any questions about this test, let me know. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of extra time since I was later posting the study guide, and I'll post some announcements about that. Let me know if I can help you with anything.